Good afternoon, ladies and gents. As you probably know, Dawn of War 3 is coming out in 2017 and we're inching ever closer. So it's fair to say that I am hyped for this game. I've put in hundreds of hours across all of the other releases in the series so far and spent a long old time in the multiplayer of Dawn of War 2. I'm so hyped, in fact, that I tend to pore over all of the news, speculation, and discussion in frankly tedious detail. But the good news is, because I do it, you don't have to. I'm going to be putting together hopefully short, informative, and enjoyable videos so that you can get all of the info without spending hours trawling for it. Though I'm certainly hyped for Dawn of War 3, there's a lot of people in the community who are skeptical, and I count myself among them to a certain extent, because there's a lot of big changes coming to the formula, which to some degree look like a step backwards, but could be a good way to mix up the formula. Anyway, I'm going to try and stay objective and deliver a balanced view on it, whilst also probably being hyped about it at the same time. So take what I have to say with a pinch of salt. Anyway, we had a big unveil of Eldar information and less scripted campaign mission gameplay, both from Charlie Hall, who was interviewing Philip Bull, the games director, over at Polygon, and with iNcontrol as well. Certainly cool to see him involved with the team at this stage. Maybe that says something about, you know, a leaning towards a competitive scene and esports and getting somebody with that pedigree involved. Who knows? Anyway, I wanted to break down that gameplay. So without further ado, here it is. So first up, we've got a look at some Dire Avengers. Yes, Dire Avengers are in the game, which is great. I was sick of seeing Guardians. Why would the Eldar be sending what is effectively their version of a militia against Space Marines? I don't know. Anyway, Dire Avengers are here. We can see they've got the plasma grenade ability, and also if you look closely at their firing animations in the video, they fire in bursts. It looks really cool. I'm definitely pleased with that. First up, they capture a power generator resource point, which you can see they can add a generator onto like you could in Dawn of War 2. However, this one only has room for one generator, and later on we do see that there are points that have two generators on them. So maybe this is something that only happens in the campaign, or maybe it's not like Dawn of War 2 where you could add 3 generators to each point. Either way, it notes that you can add, when you add additional generators, the cost for each generator added increases. So there's that kind of risk reward factor in there as well. So this first building that we're looking at is the Warrior Portal, which is the Eldar's basic infantry structure. It produces initially Dire Avengers, Dark Reapers, and Howling Banshees. However, you can upgrade it then to produce Rangers and Shadow Specters as well. We also see there are some icons that show it provides reinforcement and increased healing, and also that ability button allows you to teleport the structure around the map with the prerequisite technology level. So here we see some tall grass, which is kind of straight out of StarCraft 2, and the Rangers are already invisible, but they've also been concealed in the tall grass. Now, I don't know whether that means that when they're revealed by a servitor, they are still invisible because they're in tall grass, but I do know that it conceals non-stealth units. Here we see the Devastator Marines, and it's worth noting that they slow enemies in an area that they're firing at. So I suppose that's to kind of mimic the effect of suppression. They've only got 1080 health, which compared to the Dark Reaper, which I'll come on to later, isn't actually that much if shields and health are worth the same amount or can take the same amount of punishment. But I'm guessing that shields are lower armor value than hit points. So we can see here that there's a bar at the bottom that shows you all of the units in your army, what you've got selected, who's firing, at what time, and that's definitely useful for controlling large armies. Also, I noticed at this point on the mini-map that when you look at areas where they've spotted an enemy, but then it's gone back into the fog of war. There's a marker there. I don't know if that's just for the campaign or just for it would be included in multiplayer as well. I feel like it would be good to have in multiplayer because, you know, it's good to encourage players to have vision coverage on the map, but it's annoying when something just moves through the blip at the side of the vision radius and you don't see it because you're not staring at the minimap all the time and you're punished for that. So it'd be nice to have some sort of visual indicator that makes that less punishing but also rewards that good behavior. So in this firefight with the Space Marines, I mean, there's loads throughout this clip if you watch the original thing, but I just wanted to highlight that we're getting nice pops of gore, Marines exploding, bits of their weapons, armor, limbs flying about. From what I can see, it doesn't look like we're getting sync kills, or I haven't seen any in the footage so far, but at least for having lost that, we're not slacking in the gore department. Here's another part of the resource system. We can see that you can upgrade capture points to produce more of the resource, either requisition or power. You can see in iNcontrol's footage that the number of times you upgrade this is tied to the webway assembly. So that's the Eldar's HQ building. So you need to tech up your HQ to then increase the amount of resources you're getting. The interesting thing is, I couldn't see that it actually changed the way the resource point looked. So there's no way for your enemy to know how much resources you've dumped into that. And obviously that would make it a really big, juicy harassment target. So wondering about the wisdom of that, you know, it would seem like a good thing to telegraph to the enemy so that they understand your weak points and you understand theirs. Here we see an Eldar Bone Singer summoning in the Soul Shrine, and I just wanted to stop and appreciate how nice the summoning animation is and the portal effects. I really enjoyed that. Here we got some Dark Reapers taking out some Space Marine scouts, and I thought it was worth noting, you can see the maximum range of the scouts from the structure that they're attacking, and then we look at the Dark Reaper's range and it's nearly 3 times that. Going into the Dark Reaper's stats as well, you can see that they do AoE damage in an area, so rather than slowing like Devastator Marines, they actually do damage in an area. They've got a setup to fire, so obviously that'll probably make for some nice micro elements and works to balance how much damage they can do. They cost 440 requisition and 8 pop. Their shield is 2016 and their health is 336, and that is what made me think that shield must be worth less or able to absorb less damage than health points. Otherwise that seems crazy overpowered, but bear in mind it is campaign gameplay as well. So taking a closer look at the Soul Shrine, now it's completed, we can see that it provides health and damage upgrades, I assume in multiple tiers for both infantry and vehicles, and also we've got a ability there for Howling Banshees, which I think iNcontrol said was a charge. It also looks like being able to reinforce from webway gates is an upgrade that we can get from the Soul Shrine too. Here we see the elite Jane Zar being summoned in. First of all, I love the portal animation as she's being summoned, and then when she actually pops in, we get that cool crater underneath where she's standing. I thought that looked awesome. You can see she's got her spear and a tri-skill throwing weapon and the trademark Howling Banshee long hair, which is just looks great. It's worth noting she cost 4 elite points, and Philip Ball, the game director, said she was a reasonably early game elite. Interestingly, he also said that the elite points are a pacing mechanic built around time, so you get them over time. iNcontrol did hint that we might be able to get them some other way, but he didn't confirm how that is or if that's going to make it into the game. It is interesting to me because that means that everybody, regardless of how your economy is performing, how much of the map you control, as long as you survive in the game, you're going to have access to your elites. So I suppose that kind of keeps it balanced in some respects, means you can't knock people out as easily by cutting off their resources. I don't know. Here you can see kind of the shadow of where a Bone Singer has been ordered to put an outpost on a resource point. So it looks like that system's coming back. We can lock them down. Will they also be used for point defense like they were in Dawn of War 1? I don't know, but it looks pretty cool. Just a little note here. We see Maca is noted, I'm sure this is just for development at this stage, but she's noted as a crowd control and nuker, so we can see that's how the developers envisage her being used, and that's what her skills are designed to do. This is an interesting little touch. We see here that Ranger line of sight is blocked by the little crate in the map, and this is obviously kind of taking from the True Sight system in Company of Heroes, which is another RTS that Relic have done, and I like this. I think that you could get some really interesting situations where you can hide units using the ambient terrain, and that makes for some cool micro and fun cat and mouse gameplay. Here we see that it's not just the long grass that is taken from StarCraft or other RTSs in generally. We also have the vision system where units on the high ground can see units on the low ground, but they can't be seen themselves until they open fire. So again, this is cool because it makes you fight over favorable ground, and you know, that's always worked well in the competitive scene in StarCraft. So here we see the Shadow Specters. It's worth noting that they've got a little icon that shows how charged up their weapon is, because they gain more damage from firing continuously at the same target. Also worth noting that they've got more health than Reapers, but they do cost 30 power, so I believe power is going to be what you use to tech up and get vehicles, so if you invest in them instead of Reapers, you're slowing down your tech. I'm not sure if the long grass hides buildings, but it looks like the webway's been placed there, so maybe it will. If not, maybe it's sight blocked by the ambient terrain that's there as well. Anyway, that's potentially very cool, presents some nice options for hiding your webways, and I think the placing your webways around the map as Eldar is going to be a lot like spreading creep for Zerg in StarCraft 2 and maintaining that map presence. So I think little nuances like that are going to keep that very interesting and allow players to express their skill and knowledge of the game. More on the webways here, we can actually see how large the area of effect that the webway projects is. Now, this area of effect increases the rate at which the Eldar's battle shield regenerates, and also while they're inside this radius, they get fleet of foot. So it's important or encouraging them to fight in sort of hit and run engagement near their webways. But you'll see this area projected by the webway takes up more than an entire screen's worth. So what's important about that is it's not going to be immediately obvious where the webway is for the person fighting the Eldar, and that means that they can encourage that hit and run play style, and that the Eldar's not going to be, you know, losing webways as soon as they take an engagement near one or have units seen with fleet of foot near one. So here we see the Wraith Lord coming in. He's another elite, costs 7 elite points, and I suppose the idea is that he is kind of like Wraith Knight Light. You know, maybe you can get him into the game earlier because he's, you know, not so big, not such a presence on the battlefield, but hence he costs less elite points. So that's an interesting pacing mechanic. It sort of adds a meta into deciding what elites you're going to take to go with what strategy you're actually going to play in the course of the game, and who knows whether your elite choices will be revealed prior to the game to your opponent. Here, I've mentioned it already, but here we can see that so far builder units are used as detectors for stealth units. So we see the Rangers being detected by the Space Marine Servitor. This is kind of cool to me because obviously builders are fragile, and it means that you can potentially snipe them, and then the enemy's going to have to suffer the wrath of your invisible units, which is kind of cool. That adds in another layer of micro, raises the skill ceiling, all of that good stuff. Here we see the Sky Portal, which is the Eldar's grav vehicle production facility, or, you know, lore-wise, how they enter the battlefield. We can see it produces Vipers for fast hit-and-run fire support, Falcon grav tanks for more fire support and infantry transporting, and fire prisms, which are, you know, the big daddy range damage dealer. literally glass prism cannon. So here's another look into the base building. We can see here that the webway assembly, the Eldar HQ building, has tiers that unlock the ability to then construct yet more units, technologies, buildings, and we can see that tier 3 unlocks the fire prism and wraith blades. And it also, I'm not sure what this means, I think it's just in development, but it says it allows to connect webways to be connected to webway gates. Maybe that means that we can finally move units through webway gates, or maybe it means that we can build units straight out of the webway gates rather than spawning them back at base. In Control's gameplay footage, we do see him having this thing with his Wraith Guard, where he produces it and then can choose where to teleport it in, but he doesn't really go into detail with that, and we don't see it working quite correctly, but that might be an option, which would be pretty cool. Just another little visual touch here, we see Rangers being hit by a whirlwind artillery bombardment. Looks awesome. I love the way their kind of fragmentation rounds and hit the ground like a close range shotgun from above. It was cool seeing those Rangers get chunked. So here, this is just another bit of admiration for the visuals. When the Wraith Lord hits the Dreadnought down to below half health, we see that the Dreadnought starts to be belching smoke and sparks and looking damaged, and that gets progressively worse as we see later on with some of the Eldar grav vehicles that take fire. Here is that point where we see the Eldar Falcon grav tank running into some Space Marine anti-vehicle concentrated fire and being torn a new arsehole, and you can see it goes through multiple stages of damage to the point where it's clinging onto life and it's gushing this green ethereal fire and sparks and generally looking like you could spit on it and it would fall apart, and I just loved that. I thought that looked fantastic. Coming up to the end of the clip, we see a Space Marine Predator show up, and I believe this is a Predator Destructor. It's got the anti-infantry cannon and bolter sponsons on the side. But later on, we will also see the Predator Annihilator, which has got the twin-link las cannons and las cannon sponsons for taking out vehicles. So it's pretty cool that we see the Space Marines get different specialized weapons to deal with different threats like that. So that's the end of my kind of breakdown and impressions from the Eldar gameplay reveal. I really enjoyed it. I think the Eldar look great. I'm definitely going to be playing a lot of them when the game's actually out, and the visuals, for me, look fantastic. I know there's a lot of people who are having a heated debate about whether they're good or not, but they do it for me. I am left with some questions from what we saw in the gameplay video. So, for example, if we're in a mirror matchup, Eldar versus Eldar, and we're using all melee units or all ranged units, you know, say we've each got 3 squads of Dire Avengers and they're facing off against each other. Obviously, we can do tying them up in melee, we can do grenades, but what other micro options are there in terms of positioning or concaving that will allow us to raise a skill ceiling and win out against our opponents in a mirror? That's something I'm not really sure how that would work, so something I'm wondering and to keep an eye out for in future videos. So another note is that in iNcontrol's video playthrough with the Eldar, which I'll link below, he said that the elites don't dominate the battlefield. I think people were worried that the elites were going to turn the game more in the direction of a MOBA and that it wouldn't be a true RTS. I wasn't worried about this. I think that we've always had hero units in Dawn of War. They probably just feel more MOBA-y now because they have more MOBA-like abilities, you know, lots of leaps and dashes and skill shots and targeted abilities. And, you know, for me, that just raises the skill ceiling. It looks cool. It adds flavor and differentiation to matches. So that's fine. And I think they'll fit into the game nicely. We got to see here the pop cap and sort of some of the relative figures for what each units would cost. So the population cap is 250. So taking the example of the Dark Reapers, they cost 8 pop cap each. So with a 250 pop cap, that means we could field roughly 31 squads of Dark Reapers. They're all 4-man squads, so that would make 124 models on the field at once. That's, to me, seems like a big army, and bigger than we've had in previous Dawn of War games, but I will check. Also worth noting that, you know, Dark Reapers are specialist support squads, so things like Dire Avengers, Space Marine Scouts, Orcs are going to have much bigger squads, and that's great. I'm really looking forward to that, because although I love the Orcs and the Tyranids in Dawn of War 2, they didn't ever feel like they could field enough units to really give the aesthetic impression of them being a swarm or a tide of units. So I think that hopefully that's going to be a really positive change. I for this breakdown, I used footage from the Polygon playthrough because it was just neater, tidier, less kind of visual clutter. But in iNcontrol stream, which again I've linked below, he does actually explore a different element of the tech tree, which is the building that calls in Eldar Wraith construct. So that's Wraith guards with their D cannons, which are very heavy infantry with hard-hitting weaponry, but slow, and also Wraith blades, which are again armored infantry, slower than typical Eldar infantry, but very powerful in melee. So definitely worth checking that out, and I suppose it also shows that the Eldar later in the game will transition to having tools that let them have a more of a slugfest style fight. Another element, which I guess because this is a campaign mission, we have no idea, but with the multiplayer, how big are the maps going to be? We're going to have much more units, and I hope that means we're going to have either, you know, big battles, but also battles happening throughout the map. And obviously we need a big map to accommodate that. A lot of the maps in Dawn of War 2 generally fell into the pattern of being divided into 3 lanes. So it'd be nice for them to open up the field and give us more tactical and strategic options with how the play space that we're actually fighting on. So yeah, the Eldar as well. I am happy with the unit roster that they've got. The only one that I'm really sad that we didn't see is Striking Scorpions. They're my favourite warrior aspect after the book that was done where the protagonist is a Striking Scorpion. You know, who doesn't want more chainswords in the game? But it's interesting to me, did we see all the aspects in this video? You know, missing out, we have Shining Spears on their jet bikes. We have Warp Spiders, which have been in both the other Dawn of War 2 games and are like the ultimate hit and run unit for Eldar, so weird not to see them. There's also Swooping Hawks and Fire Dragons. Fire Dragons would definitely be stepping on the toes of the Shadow Specters, so I get that, no problem. But Swooping Hawks are great, you know, flying units, you know, shooting lasers down from the sky, definitely up for that. Also, we didn't see, or I didn't see in this gameplay, any options to upgrade squads with Exarchs. So in Dawn of War 2, you could upgrade squads with the Exarch, which would add usually another dimension to that squad. So for example, the Howling Banshee would get their Exarch, and she had a spear that was classed as a power weapon, which actually let her do a good bit of damage to light vehicles. So it gave you a bit of flexibility to be able to deal with light vehicles if you upgraded the Exarch. Previously with Guardian squads, you could add a Warlock on there, which gave them more meat in melee. Maybe because this is going to be a bigger game and they want to keep the game readable, from a, you know, while lots of stuff and lots of units are engaging, maybe they don't want to make it that granular. Something to look out for, and maybe I would miss it a little bit. I like my warrior aspect Exarchs as well. So that's everything from me on the Eldar reveal. I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely still excited for Dawn of War, and I can't wait for them to put out more news. I will be creating more news videos and analysis like this on what we see. Definitely interested to hear what you guys thought about it in the comments below. If you thought this was good and you want to see more of this kind of content, let me know in the comments. Drop me a subscribe. Also very open to constructive criticism. These are obviously the first videos I'm doing. So until next time.